as he likes, as he likes, as he likes, with his property or his labor. 3. Are we collectively going crazy? Which do you think? People are just dumb and gullible, but not you. Or structural problems hinder us from fully resolving needs, and we increasingly suffer the results. Elites seem to normalize all this craziness. News programs skip important details and wonder why we stop watching. Politicians openly embrace corruption. A foreign government openly boasts of manipulating our foreign policy and domestic agenda. Talking heads argue with each other, then sanitize their rudeness by calling it a mere debate. Both sides refuse to learn anything from the other, as if they have the whole truth. Both sides try to win at the other's expense. Both sides evade the full truth. Exaggerations get peddled as facts. Emotional honesty gets dismissed as too irrational to consider. How often do you jump into conflicts just for the sake of enjoying a fight? Welcome aboard to Need Response, co-hosted by me, Steph Turner.
And me, Gustavo. Need Response is a new professional service responding to your needs in ways no other option can.
Join us today as we apply this new scientific understanding of your needs to your life. Together, we
Spread more love.
We introduced you to the idea of structural problems in the previous episode. Individuals on their own remain powerless to solve such problems. In this episode, we focus on one of these structural problems called toxic legalism. To first put this problem into context, we explore what an ankelology, the study of need, identifies as our need-response orientations. We routinely respond or react to the needs we face. Too often, we react more than respond to each other's needs. Need response seeks to get us back to being more responsive to our inflexible needs.
Last time, you introduced us to a structural problem you call toxic legalism.
Yes, I did.
What is toxic legalism?
First, can I go over what it isn't?
Sure.
Toxic legalism covers 5 elements. Each of these elements actually reveals an immature level of what oncology recognizes as a need-response orientation.
Need response orientation. And what exactly is a need response orientation?
It speaks to how we routinely respond to the needs in our lives.
Oh, something like a sexual orientation?
Well, not exactly. A need-response orientation can change. It can improve or regress and get much, much worse.
Okay, I have a list of 5 of them here. I'll name it and let you define it, and then describe the immature and the mature side of each.
Sure, you will see how we all experience these need-response orientations on a regular basis.
First, conflict orientation.
Yes, conflict orientation. How do you routinely react or respond to a conflict? When confronted or opposed by another, you either get defensively guarded or stay open to learning what the other seeks or needs.
Next, easement orientation.
Sure, easement orientation. How do you routinely react or respond to pain or discomfort? When experiencing discomfort or pain, you either rush to seek relief or endure the displeasure to face the underlying need.
Now, relational orientation.
Right, relational orientation. How do you process information about some need? When encountering the facts or some need, you either avoid confusion by clinging to comforting generalizations, or you willingly explore any relevant details.
Fourth, authenticity orientation.
Authenticity orientation. How do you convey your need-provoked emotions to others? When expected to answer for your actions, You either resort to rationality to avoid feeling exposed, or you authentically express your emotions in a disciplined manner.
Lastly, at least for this list, psychosocial orientation.
Finally, psychosocial orientation. How much do you ascribe some need as what you can do about it, and how much is left up to others? When experiencing some need, you either vacillate between taking too much responsibility and blaming others, or you appreciate how much is honestly your role and how much is vulnerable to others.
Yes, I can see this on an almost daily basis.
Can you think of a recent example?
Yeah, when my coworker got upset with me about something that didn't seem all that important to me, I found myself get easily defensive and trying to avoid him.
Your conflict orientation quickly switched to the mode of defensively guarded.
Yes, it did, but not for long.
Oh,
He showed me some paperwork why it mattered, and then I could feel myself become open to learn as he calmly explained himself.
sounds like both of you are mature enough to handle conflict in a constructive way.
Yes, unlike some of our world leaders who seem to engage in what I heard characterized as conflict porn.
Yes, political leaders often gain from fueling conflicts and keeping us at odds with each other.
I can't but help observe this in the Middle East.
Yes, Mr. Netanyahu appears to gain more from keeping the area embroiled in conflict than pursuing real peace.
Yeah, I can see that.
Instead of being open to learning what the Gazans inflexibly need, he remains defensively guarded by characterizing them all as Hamas terrorists, without regard for how the Israeli blockade can provoke them into defensively guarded acts of desperation.
You mean the Al Qasr flood operation of October 7th?
Yes, and even before, can we be open to learning that the Netanyahu government is not really interested in destroying Hamas?
No.
Not as much as characterizing all Gazan Palestinians as Hamas, as a pretext to push out all non Jews from what many Israelis regard as their own land, what they call Greater Israel.
Oh, I see.
Yes, Netanyahu exploits those who remain defensively guarded about October 7th, who gullibly accept his propaganda that they're bombing Gaza and starving their population to fight terrorism, which itself is terrorism, as the IDF targets countless innocent women and children.
I see. Terrorism abounds where all sides get defensively guarded.
Yes, it definitely does. It's not easy to be open to learning when ducking for cover all of the time.
When I get defensively guarded, I'm less open to critical information and remain less aware. Thankfully, I don't get stuck there. I can see how fighting Hamas serves as a pretext for what can be easily characterized as ethnic cleansing.
Yes, the atrocities of October 7 remain terrible, but the disproportionate reaction smells far worse.
Yes, it does. These cycles of violence seem to fed up upon the fear of the other side's violence. But the news media like to take sides in ways that reinforces each other side's deteriorating conflict orientation.
There used to be this saying that an eye for an eye makes a whole world blind. Has the whole world, or most of it, finally gone blind?
Do you think Netanyahu aims to kill all Palestinians?
No, but I do think that's the wet dream of Giver and Smotrich. Netanyahu prefers that the Palestinians self-deport to someplace far away.
You mean scare them into fleeing, right?
Yeah, I think he wants to scare them into self-deportation, to force them to flee, much like those Palestinians who fled their homeland in 1948 and again in 1967.
But this time there seems to be more resistance, more resolve among Palestinians to endure the seemingly unbearable. And in fact, they have nowhere to go.
I suspect anyone who still gullibly believes Netanyahu and his right-wing government is polarizing Gaza to get rid of Hamas reveals their immature conflict orientation.
Yes, I can see that.
Those with an immature conflict orientation likely have an immature easement orientation who cannot tolerate life's discomforts.
And other immature reactions in what you call, what was it again?
Need response orientations.
Ah, yes, checking my list again. They also present a poor relational orientation by clicking to overgeneralizations.
Yes, they do. And at times, we all do. We all struggle to improve how we effectively respond to each other's inflexible needs and responsibly address our own inflexible needs.
Yes, because we all deal with this problem of toxic legalism in some way.
Yes, we do. I have a clip here that aptly explains what toxic legalism is about.
Okay, run clip.
No one is above the law, right? Wrong. Everyone's existence is above the law. Every inflexible need sits above the law. What do you think will happen if you try to force your inflexible needs to fit flexible laws? Is this not the source of plenty of mental anguish and even mental illness? This popular platitude too easily privileges tyranny and too easily leads to poor wellness outcomes. Here are some more platitudes to be wary about. Take personal responsibility. Stop blaming the system. Be rational. Stop basing your views on your feelings. Keep it simple. Why overthink it? Relieve your pain. You deserve to be happy. Take a stand on every issue. Don't let others walk over you. What's wrong with these? Everything. Each of these platitudes, these pat answers to complex problems, point to the deeper problem of toxic legalism. Toxic legalism is when you put laws, which can be changed, ahead of needs that cannot be changed. Like when someone tries to force their inflexible needs to fit their flexible rules. Toxic legalism puts flexible laws ahead of inflexible needs, for which laws exist to serve. You can spot toxic legalism as favoring the immature side of 5 need response orientations. In each of these, the original noble purpose of law slips into something less noble and quite harmful. 1. Taking personal responsibility slips into hyper individualism. You find yourself taking personal responsibility for things beyond your personal control. Your psychosocial orientation slides into imbalance, into swinging back and forth between over responsibility and irresponsibility. Balance evades you. But if this is a widespread norm, you may not even notice yourself slipping into this trap. 2. Applying rational authority slips into hyper-rationality. You suppress your need reporting feelings with supposed reasoning to fit into social expectations. Your authenticity orientation slides into guarding your true self behind rationalizations. Emotional honesty evades you. The more others are doing the same, you hardly notice how damaging this can be. 3. The vagueness of law slips into overgeneralizing. You skip over relevant details to make it easier to be agreeable, but then you cannot fully resolve your needs until you incorporate such overlooked specifics. Your relational orientation slides into exaggerations and trusted hyperboles. Relevant nuance evades you. Seems like everyone is agreeable to evade the messy details. 4. Keeping authority impartial slips into discomfort avoidance. You evade your body's warnings of threats to your well-being as you alienate yourself from your own feelings and from others. Your easement orientation slides into seeking relief over resolving the needs prompting your pain. Meaningful engagement evades you. The more alienated we become from one another and from our own body's threat warning system, the less we notice the problem. 5. Firm norm enforcement slips into hostile adversarialism. You oppose not only others' positions or actions, but you oppose their inflexible needs that they cannot change. You provoke mutual defensiveness and you insist that you're right without regarding the facts of what they need. Your conflict orientation slides into staying guarded and not learning from others. Conflict resolution evades you. Many will even agree that might makes right. Do you still think that no one is literally above the law? Sure, no one sits above the law, but no flexible law sits above the inflexible needs they exist to serve. When watered down as an overgeneralizing maxim, it easily shrinks into a mere platitude. This platitude was popularized by Teddy Roosevelt, who declared in his message to Congress in 1903, "No man is above the law, and no man is below it." He rightly balanced obligation to comply with laws with the law's obligation to respect their rights. He was addressing the conflicts between organized labor and organized capital, and put them both on equal footing before the law. The contemporary platitude waters down this balancing context. Leaving out the part that no one is below the law can suggest that we must obey every law without question. Such blind obedience to authority is antithetical to the American experience, with its roots challenging British tyranny. When declaring no one is above the law, what Teddy Roosevelt was actually saying was how no one's impactful behavior sits outside the scope of agreed upon standards for our conduct. Not that authority itself can infringe upon your rights. Indeed, he was saying the exact opposite. As he put it, quote, "Every man must be guaranteed his liberty and his right to do as he likes with his property or his labor, so long as he does not infringe the rights of others." Unquote. The law serves as a metaphor for respecting the inflexible needs of each other. The more any law or authority favors one over another, or even favors itself over others, the less legitimate that law or authority. Authority, for the sake of authority, is no authority at all. Legitimate authority must be accountable to everyone's affected needs. If your actions have no impact on others, then there is no legitimate standard. Nor is there any legitimate law or standard telling you what you can and cannot need. Your inflexible needs cannot change to fit some law. Laws are flexible and can always be changed to fit our needs. You don't exist to serve authority. Authority exists to serve you. For example, humanity was not made to keep the Sabbath, but rather the standard for keeping the Sabbath rest was made for humanity. The needs came first. Then laws emerged on how best to serve such needs. Toxic legalism gets this backwards. If you ever find yourself complying with some rule or social norm without knowing why, toxic legalism knocks at your door. The more you suppress your own inflexible needs to suit the demands of authority or others, the less you can function well enough to keep up. Need response counters this pervasive problem of toxic legalism by prioritizing your inflexible needs over unresponsive authority. Need response offers programs to develop each of your need response orientations, to help mature them. You learn to replace knee-jerk adversarialism with mutual regard for each other. You learn to stretch your endurance of discomfort to meaningfully resolve needs. You learn to investigate relevant nuance to dissolve the grip of overgeneralizations, and more. Instead of mindlessly bending to the rules, you identify and address the specific needs those rules should serve. then you serve those needs from the intrinsic motivation of love, and not from the extrinsic motivation of fear of potential reprimands. You don't need more policies, more rules, or more laws. No, you and I both need more love.
This could be quite controversial.
How do you mean?
Challenging authority, especially when so many accept such authority,
Uh huh.
or who count on that authority for giving meaning and order to their lives.
Yes, I see your point. But I'm not suggesting we defy.
I know I wouldn't stand up against authority, even if it tramples a little bit over my rights.
You won't have to.
I trust myself to endure some of the inconvenience that come with protections of authority.
Yes, the more unconventional services of need response could be a hard sell to those most comfortable with the way things are.
And I can't say that I would blame them.
Neither would I. The first to use these services would most likely be those willing to dare something so new.
You mean those who may be desperate enough that anything new seems more promising?
Well, I don't like to put it that way, but that's not far from the truth. Consider those who have tried every legal avenue available and still cannot clear this miscarriage of justice.
Like what? Do you have an example?
Yes, consider the wrongly convicted innocent repeatedly decline help from the innocence movement.
You mean those convicted of a crime but had no actual role in such a crime?
Yes.
Why would the innocence movement turn them down? Because they don't believe they're actually innocent?
No, that's not always the case. Innocent projects tend to be understaffed. They get far more requests for help than they can reasonably process. They must find some way to narrow their caseload.
Oh, so they can't process every viable claim of innocence.
Right, they can't and don't. With their limited resources, they tend to only take cases that they can trust will have a stronger chance to reverse the conviction in court.
Sounds like they're risk adverse.
Well, put yourself in their shoes. If too many cases fail to be reversed in court, then this could look bad on their record, and their funders may lose hope in their effort.
I see.
But if they concentrate on those cases with an easier chance for a conviction reversal in court, it can be easier to convince their funding sources to keep the revenue flowing.
Because the wrongly convicted in prison can't afford to hire such lawyers.
Right. All innocent litigators that I know offer their services pro bono, for free, but must draw an income for this work some other way.
Instead of billing clients and answer directly to these innocence claimants, they answer more to the priorities of the funders.
Sadly but true, and those are the lucky ones, fortunate to be granted legal help to review their innocence claim.
And what can the others do? What option is left for the wrongly convicted innocent who can't get any help from the innocence movement? I know the answer. I'm just setting it up for you.
Yes, you know that's exactly what Need Response aims to do.
To keep hope alive for the countless innocents in prison, or on parole, or on probation, or beyond.
Yes.
And how many do you think are out there who would need this alternate service?
No one truly knows, but it's estimated that between 2 and 5% of all prisoners are actually innocent.
Wow, that could be in the thousands, considering the historically high prison population.
Yes, with its total prison population at all government levels, the estimated innocent actually runs into the tens of thousands,
Wow,
perhaps even over 100,000.
but don't all prisoners claim they're innocent?
No, that's just a myth.
Oh?
Only about 15% of prisoners claim actual innocence.
Only 15%?
Others will complain their sentence was too harsh, and many have a point, but they don't claim they didn't do the terrible deeds that got them into legal trouble.
Then why does it seem, at least in the media, that prisoners are in so much denial about their crimes?
I think it comes from the initial reactions of those who first get arrested.
Oh,
The grieving stages of the grieving stages set in. First, they are shocked when first confronted and then arrested. Next, they deny their behavior was serious enough to involve the police.
Then they get angry, right? And these early stages often get caught on camera.
Right. By the time they get to prison, actual offenders tend to reach that last and final grieving stage of acceptance. And that's not caught on camera. Most will finally own up to their harmful actions while not liking what's being done to them about it. You see, they have no reason to claim innocence.
I can see how this creates a stereotype that all or most prisoners claim to be innocent.
Some will argue that their actions were not illegal, but that's not actual innocence. And others challenge the harshness of the sentence, but not the conviction itself.
They acknowledge they did the deed, unlike the innocent, who asserts they did not do such deeds.
Right. Some of these innocent prisoners will feel over responsible for the situation as they try to make sense of this painful experience. Some grasp for meaning with such a thought like, maybe this is karma for past wrongs I've done, but consistently maintain their innocence in the current acts.
That reminds me of what you said earlier about becoming imbalanced and taking too much responsibility.
Yes, that speaks to an immature psychosocial orientation, a swinging back and forth between the extremes of irresponsibility and over responsibility.
Your mature psychosocial orientation balances your responsibility to others with others' responsibilities or legal obligations to you.
Precisely. Let's get back to those elements of toxic legalism, which play such a huge role in wrongly convicting the innocent.
Alright,
With each element of toxic legalism, I'll first affirm its noble role in the law.
okay.
Then I'll unpack a widely accepted myth that props up toxic legalism in our lives.
Hmm.
Then, for each toxic legalism element, I wrap up with need responses answered.
Alright, let's go for it.
You brought up over responsibility, and that speaks to the first element of toxic legalism. I have another clip that unpacks each of these myths, using examples of interest to the wrongly convicted innocent.
Okay, run next clip.
Need response recognizes 5 elements shaping the law and how those elements can turn sour when we start believing and acting upon our distorting myths. These myths tend to spill over into a structural problem called toxic legalism. 1. The law must hold our personal actions accountable for how we affect others. Good. Not so good is the myth that all individuals have personal agency over every aspect of their lives and how it's never okay to blame the system. This fuels toxic legalism. Toxic legalism affords little to no context for all the ways our personal behavior options are limited. Toxic legalism suggests, for example, that the wrongly convicted innocent should responsibly utilize all legal avenues for exoneration, while that ignores the structural problems hindering actual justice. 2. The law must be based on rational authority to keep our biases in check. Good. Not so good is the myth that believes your emotions distort your thinking, and that you must keep your feelings in check with reasoning that suppresses or represses your emotions. Toxic legalism normalizes staying guarded behind rational-sounding arguments to avoid emotional honesty, like when lawyers use motivated reasoning to explain away their biases, to conveniently ignore how they affect your inflexible needs expressed through emotions. 3. The law must fit a wide array of situations, so it's kept intentionally vague and not too specific. Good. Not so good is the myth that we can water down complex truths into bite-sized pellets for easy digestion, then ignore some essential details. Toxic legalism entertains exaggerations to avoid disagreeable nuance. For example, the appellate process to review a conviction will declare a costly mistake as harmless error because it tends to put more faith in generalizations of procedural justice than the actual impacts on specific justice needs. 4. The law is to be applied equally to all, so favoritism is avoided as law enforcers keep an impersonal distance. Good. Not so good is the myth that pain is bad and should be avoided as much as possible, as if that could keep you feeling happy. Toxic legalism shows itself where the legal process offers to relieve the pain of the winning side in court or at the ballot box, practically guaranteeing all sides suffer pain from impeding their ability to fully resolve their inflexible needs. For example, the judicial process rarely, if ever, personally addresses the many specifically affected needs of either the accuser or the accused. 5. The law incentivizes lawbreakers to respect the needs of others with warnings of punishment for disrespecting others. Good. Not so good is the myth that might makes right in a conflict, that one side is totally right and the other side must be totally wrong. Toxic legalism presumes justice is served when one side in a conflict wins and the other loses. For example, the adversarial judicial approach needlessly provokes adjudicated parties into mutual defensiveness, leaving little to no room for appreciating each other's affected needs. These 5 elements risk pulling us into symfunction, as they hinder us from being able to fully resolve our conflict-affected needs. The less we can properly function, the more likely we become targets for law enforcement. This conflict of interest rarely, if ever, gets addressed. Need response instills a level of discipline currently lacking in the adversarial legal process. Instead of aiming for the low bar of maintaining social order, need response aims to address and properly resolve each other's affected needs. Wellness then abounds with matured need response orientations. Fear dissolves, replaced by courage. Hate fades, replaced by an empowering love.
I can see how this relates to sync function capture, which we explored the next time.
Yes, it does. And those myths take hold when we don't resolve our needs as much as we ease our needs.
Which leave us in pain, as our unmet needs cry out for attention.
Exactly. The less we can fully function on our own, the more we turn to laws to cope.
That puts the scene into the less than optimal level of functioning. We then fall back on others instead of being fully independent.
Precisely. Toxic legalism takes hold as our need response orientations fail to mature.
That could help us understand what's wrong with society today.
You know what's wrong with society today? Here's what's wrong. We don't respond to needs anymore. We react to them. Even the law coldly reacts instead of responding to our inflexible needs.
With the decline of religion's preeminent role in Western societies, I can see how we normalize reacting in ways that scriptures and traditional practice also prohibited.
Yes, when I was young, self-righteousness was condemned as a vice. Now it's turned into some kind of political virtue.
But there are still those who maturely respond to needs, while others react to their feelings.
Exactly. The mature respond more than react.
The mature stay open to learning and not get easily defensive to resolve conflicts.
Yes, the mature endure hardships and not shrink from discomforts to resolve more needs.
The mature let go of generalizations to process more relevant specifics.
Right. The mature can honestly relate their emotions without rationalizations.
The mature can respond to needs without getting reactive or legalistic.
Exactly. The immature vacillates between being feel reactive on the one hand, then norm imposing on the other hand.
So you can group people, generally speaking, into 3 different camps, or only 2, with one of them swinging back and forth between extremes.
You can divide up people into 3 major camps, okay? Picture an isosceles triangle.
With equal angles on the left and right, and a point at the top.
Right. At that top, you find that need responsive. Their intent is to resolve needs, which restores full wellness as it removes pain.
Okay, I'm imagining that triangle diagram, with the need response at the apex on top.
Now picture the lower left corner at that triangle.
Okay,
Here you find the feel reactive. They tend to indulge their desires with little to no reflection and tend to avoid or relieve any discomfort, which ignores the needs prompting such pain.
yeah, I can see that.
Over on the lower right corner, you find the norm imposing.
Hmm.
They rely on rules and laws to quickly suppress reactive behaviors of the offensive kind.
Oh, yes, giving rise to toxic legalism.
Yep, you nailed it right on the head with that one.
The quicker they apply the adversarial legal approach, the less room afforded to identify and address each other's persistent needs.
Exactly. Need response exists to encourage and incentivize us all to be more need responsive.
Do not call the laws to save the day.
Right. To respond directly to the needs by expressing those needs personally, instead of waiting for some rule ordering your behavior to somehow respect the less visible needs of others.
I've heard some say that societies in the West are gradually sliding into what Soviet society was like decades ago.
Yes, I've heard that too. This reminds me of a quote from Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the Soviet dissident sent to the Gulag for criticizing Stalin.
Yes, he wrote about his experiences and became a widely read author.
Yes, I find inspiration in these words he said in a Harvard commencement address he gave back in 1978.
Okay,
I have spent all my life under a communist regime, and I will tell you that a society without any objective legal scale is a terrible one indeed. But a society with no other scale but the legal one is also less than worthy of humanity. A society based on the letter of the law and never reaching anything higher fails to take advantage of the full range of human possibilities.
yeah, I see how this legalistic mindset has taken root in the West, just as Solzhenitsyn warned us that it would.
Whenever society sinks into the abyss of sympfunction and then slides into collective dysfunction, someone tends to emerge to sound the alarm.
Like a kind of prophet who inspires people toward greater well being.
Yes, but some of those get beat down. Prophets get stoned to death for speaking the truth. As George Orwell put it, the further a society drifts from the truth, the more it will hate those that speak it.
Do you count yourself among them?
Well, to be honest, yes, I do.
You've been punished for not fitting neatly into society, at a time when fitting in can be painfully overrated.
There are two kinds of people who get targeted for punishment: those who violate the law for selfish gain, and those who transcend the law for universal gain.
You mean like Socrates being sentenced to death, and Jesus being sentenced to death?
Good examples. Both transcended the toxic legalism of their day.
Neither response enables us to transcend the traps of toxic legalism, which I can see generating some pushback.
Yes, I'm struggling with such pushback now.
Oh,
Because of the wrongful conviction, I remain in financial limbo. Consequently, I've fallen behind on my bills and rent.
oh no.
I risk eviction and returning to being homeless.
Wow.
But I remain resolute to spread this love anchored message with this podcast.
You can continue the podcast while homeless.
Yes, I already received help from family members to help me record it. I can learn to apply need responsive principles to help demonstrate their effectiveness for anyone in trouble.
Good. That's kind of inspiring.
I hope so. One change is in order, which I told you about earlier.
Yes, switching from publishing an episode every week to every other week.
Yes, I'm afraid so. The first four episodes were a week apart, but now we'll have to slow down as I'll also need time to work on the Archaeology Foundation website and to focus more on building out the exoneration services.
You're putting the final touches on serving the wrongly convicted innocent.
Yes, I'm about to welcome those who remain underserved by Innocent Project. I now have the estimated innocent form available at the site.
Is it still available at the older vendor-related website?
It is, but I will terminate that in the near future when I can find the time, and only after it's fully accessible at the new site of archaeologyfoundation.org.
I hope you can find the time. And for all who are innocent, who need such services, less bound to toxic legalism.
Thank you.
Stay tuned every other week to follow how we build this much needed service.
Subscribe if you haven't already to be sure you do not miss any opportunity to help each other improve all of our lives.
Next time, we focus more on this estimated innocence form and what it can do for the wrongly convicted innocent.
See you there.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Need Response. We look forward to serving you next time, bringing you more insights and inspiration into serving your needs. Subscribe to Need Response wherever you get your podcasts. A new episode is ready for you each Wednesday morning. Until then, let's spread some love.